Welcome back. It's Monday. It's time for Worst of the Week. And I was like, finally, Night Terrors is over. Issue number 4 is here. The finale of this entire event. 45 issues in the making. We're going to finally learn about Insomnia and what he's doing, what the big plan is. It turns out this wasn't the end. And I feel like an absolute jabroni for even reading this comic book, thinking that I was going to get something interesting. And here to talk to me about Night Terrors number 4 from Josh Williamson, Giuseppe Camuncoli, and a couple of other artists is my good friend Doc. How you doing, buddy?
I really hate you for making me read this. I really do.
I've made you read way worse stuff than this. This is inherently average, but it is a big event book, and this is the big reveal for Insomnia, the big new villain that they introduced, and I can't imagine anything being more cliche and stupid and nonsensical than who Insomnia turns out to be.
Honestly, whenever you assign me like really bad comics, I can at least make fun of them. This just like bored me to death. This was just how to write the most basic bitch superhero story and also steal all the power set of Freddy Krueger.
45 issues of this event. If you bought in fully to this and you actually read all of them, the joke's on you. This is the 6th one I believe I've read. And I guess the joke's on me too, because I read six issues too many. It wasn't worth even that much. But if you went for the whole 45, we're talking like $180 if you just bought them at cover price or something crazy like that. My goodness. What happened to Josh Williams? Let's get to this book. So it starts out. There's a team. There's Batman, who's not really Batman because he's being, poltergeisted by Deadman. He's taking over his body. There's Damian Wayne, because Damian Wayne's everywhere. He's like the Harley Quinn of 2023 for some reason. And then there's Wesley Dodd, the original Sandman. I didn't think he was in the DC Comics universe anymore, but apparently I was wrong. And they're on a trip. They finally made it to Arkham Tower because in a dream, Deadman or Batman, I'm not really sure which one, not really sure which one's speaking when they speak, unless they say it's not Batman or it is a Deadman or something like that. They were told Insomnia's real body was in Arkham Tower, and that's where they needed to go with the Nightmare Stone, which they have collected in the abyss of some place that doesn't really exist. We start getting hints, pieces of what this character's actual origin is. It turns out his name is Christopher Lacas. He was a serial killer who refused to sleep, and the press called him Insomnia. But no one knew this. They never put 2 and 2 together. If you were a serial killer, Doc, and you refused to sleep, wouldn't you just die?
Well, yeah, you would. After a certain period of time, without sleep, the body shuts down. This is kind of basic physiology 101.
I guess he was put into a medically induced coma to keep him asleep forever. So I guess he couldn't break out and kill people again. That's what I took from this.
That was what the dialogue and everything said. But then the story that they showed behind it didn't seem to match any of that.
Well, let's get into that. So Deadman leaves Batman's body, and he takes the Nightmare Stone and uses that to enter into Insomnia's mind or his nightmare or whatever. I will give this comic book this. Giuseppe Camuncoli makes Nightmare look more scary than he did in some of the other issues. It looks more nightmarish. I'll give it that. It's still not scary, but it's better. And it turns out the reason that Insomnia, Christopher Lacas or whatever his name is, became a serial killer is because he was playing with his kids and his family. They were having a nice time. The Justice League were fighting somebody, and then a building fell on top of his family, and that was his nightmare. And so to get back at the Justice League, I'm trying to put my head around this one, this guy decided he was never going to sleep again and start killing people indiscriminately and becoming a serial killer, but never actually tell the Justice League he was doing it or why, to bait them in to fight him or find him or so he get retribution. He just decided to take out the Justice League, dropping a building on his family, on all these other people, and to never sleep again. It doesn't feel like this makes sense to me.
Oh, no. You nailed it there. I mean, there was even more to this than that doesn't make sense. The refusal to sleep came from him having a nightmare that he never wanted to see again, but the nightmare that he described occurred when he was awake. Now, the whole turning into a serial killer and killing people and blaming the Justice League, but never telling the Justice League, never even hinting at it, didn't seem to make a fuck bit of sense either.
the way that he gets his powers as being Insomnia and be able to hit everybody is he was hit by the chubby rain that happened in Lazarus Volcano or Lazarus Plate or whatever. But at that point, it sounds to me like he was already in prison or in Arkham Tower and under sedation. Obviously, he's a serial killer. He's not out. Did they, I don't know, did the nurses take him outside and say, let's do an experiment? We've got this chubby rain that's making people go haywire and giving them powers. Let's put it on the serial killer? Like, how did he even get hit with the rain if he was indoors the whole fucking time?
So he was a serial killer before he got powers from a nightmare that happened when he was awake, so he refused to sleep. And then when he did get caught and put into a coma, he got powers that you'd only get if you were outside in the rain while he was inside in a medically induced coma. And they didn't bother to explain any fucking bit of this and how it worked. I mean, hey, maybe Harley decided, ooh, let's see what would happen. That would at least be able to get us back to like real Harley Quinn where she's doing crazy bullshit.
They don't. It gave him nightmare powers because it kind of syncs up with his Insomnia nickname that the press gave him.
I know, super goddamn convenient that it gives him nightmare powers.
What if he was able to swim underwater like Aquaman? You're like, why is the Insomnia guy talking to fish?
It seems really, really super convenient that his powers just happen to line up with his already existing nickname. I feel like whoever put this character together and Joshua Williams' storytelling here really, really suffers because they didn't even seem to make any attempt to make it make sense.
Well, he didn't even make an attempt to make it cool. That's the biggest crime against comic books in this issue. Josh Williamson didn't even try to do anything interesting. So let's get to the big climax of this bad boy, because we've been leading up to this. Now we know who Insomnia is. We know the origin of the character. Makes you less interested in him and makes you wish you never invested in the story. But that's beside the point. Why would you take anything called the Nightmare Stone to a man who has nightmare powers is beyond me. It feels like Batman, Deadman, Wesley Dodd, and Damian Wayne should have figured this one out. But it was Insomnia's plan the whole time for these guys to go to the existence between our reality and the hell or something, to find the stone and bring it back to him. So they end up showing up and taking him the Nightmare Stone.
I was expecting him to start chomping on a cigar like Murdoch from the A-Team and going, I love when a plan comes together. Everything possible had to go right for his plan to work. The world's greatest detective, an already dead guy, the son of the world's greatest detective, and what is essentially kind of a sleep superhero. They would all get retarded enough to think, ooh, let's take the Nightmare Stone to the Nightmare guy. That I'm sure that's going to work out exactly perfectly for us, and it's not a giant trap.
And it turns out he's got some Freddy Krueger-ness to him, because if you die in the nightmare, you die in real life. Does Boston Brand kill Insomnia, or does Insomnia kill himself?
Insomnia kills himself. He commits suicide in his dream, and then his jugular blows out in the real world.
Yeah, so he kills himself in the dream, and it turns out his living body was the only thing from keeping Insomnia in the dream world from entering the real world, because that makes a lot of sense. But now that he's got the Nightmare Stone, he kills himself, he shows up in the real world, and everyone's screwed, and that's the end of the comic book, because it turns out Night Terrors number 4, the finale, wasn't the finale. The epilogue is actually the end of this comic book, but I'm never going to make it that far. This is the end of the road for me, sir.
In fairness, I'm really happy that what is essentially an Omega issue is actually the end of the story this time. So fuck this.
So here's the real question, Doc. We're at the end of the review. There's one more bit of the story left. Are you coming back in for Night Terrors Night's End?
To see how they finally take care of the nightmares that are in the real world now and not just in their head.
And put it back all the way it was before, so nothing happened.
Yeah, no, I can just pretend that this didn't happen and go from reading whatever you were reading before, like issue 4 of whatever DC book was out that you were reading, to issue 5 when that comes out. Ignore everything that happened in the middle because it didn't matter anyways, because they never matter anyways.
So I believe this is like the fourth event book that Josh Williamson has done. He did Flash War, which I did not like, Infinite Frontier, which I didn't read enough of to like or hate. I was completely indifferent to it because it was so boring and stupid. He did Dark Crisis, which became Dark Crisis on Infinite Earths when the sales weren't very good. That absolutely blew donkey dicks. And then Night Terrors, it turns out, was an enormous waste of fucking time. Stop doing event books, Josh Williamson. You fucking suck at it. God.
I've only read his stuff on event books, so I don't know how he is on like the monthly book. So the only things that I've read from him are the things you've assigned me during these for this show that are event books. And yeah, I don't think he's any good at all. He can't even keep his own internal plot logic consistent from the beginning to the end of an issue, much less actually finishing out an event. I've heard nothing but bad things about him dropping the ball at the end. He can't even make the villain in this story, the villain's backstory in this miniseries. He can't even make that make any fucking sense. So, no, I just don't think he's any good.
Speaking of people that we're pretty sure aren't very good at comic books, we actually reviewed another issue of Night Terrors last week, which I do think is more embarrassing than this one. It's probably worse than that. It's Night Terrors Punchline, Danny Lore doing what Danny Lore does, destroying a character that once had potential but has fallen so far that Danny Lore is writing them. If you haven't seen this one, this is absolutely hilarious. It's such a joke that people even said anything positive about this. I don't know what's wrong with people. This thing absolutely sucked even worse. There's also a link in the video description.